Hi, my name is Mike Arnold. At the personal request of Nigerian Presidential Advisor Reno Omokri and National Security Advisor Nuhu Rabadu, I recently traveled to Nigeria as part of a much publicized fact finding mission to report the truth on the Nigerian genocide. This was just one additional step in my 6 year mission to investigate and document this tragedy. During this time, I've traveled across Nigeria, often at great personal risk and sacrifice, visiting communities struck by genocide, concentration camps of the displaced generation of Nigerians, schools and orphanages filled with children who saw their families slaughtered, and much, much more, including some of the highest offices in the land. The reality of my recent trip was that I was invited to be a stooge for their international PR stunt. They somehow thought that after 6 years of investigating this genocide firsthand, across many dark corners of Nigeria and working to raise awareness of this back home, that I would somehow get up front of the media and lie about it. Of course, I refused, and instead, God used me to flip the script, and I told the truth that they are so desperately trying to hide. I did what I was asked. I spoke the truth, and by God's mighty power, it had great impact. A long suppressed truth is always explosive. Data shows that just a few days after the press conference, total impressions across all media were more than 3 billion. And the narrative worldwide flipped from 80% denying genocide to 70% affirming. Observers on both sides of the Atlantic say this had an obvious impact on President Trump's recent statements and actions in this matter. I think that's pretty explosive. This is part two of that report. It is the official continuation of the important work I was formally invited to do by top representatives of the Nigerian government, and it exposes an even darker, deeper, and more suppressed truth. When you understand what's happening in Nigeria, how so many different pieces have come together and all the moving parts over such an extended time, it's hard to deny that there is an intelligent design. Auschwitz did not build itself. Swastika flags didn't just randomly appear across Germany. The armies of the Third Reich didn't just spring up out of nowhere. And in the same way, the evil jihad genocide machine we are seeing in Nigeria today didn't just happen by natural evolution or pop up spontaneously. By all indications, it is a long running, strategic, sophisticated, and lucrative venture, and it's intentional. All evidence points to an intelligent design, and that begs the question: who is the designer? And what do they aim to achieve? Part one of my report dealt entirely in verifiable, sourced facts to conclude beyond any reasonable doubt, and according to the United Nations definition, that there is indeed in Nigeria today a current, long running, and growing genocide taking place by radical Islamist jihadis against Christians, nonviolent Muslims, and anybody else who stands in their way. My prior report also straightened out some of the spin from President Tinubu's team's talking points. For example, when whole villages of Christian farmers are systematically wiped out overnight by marauding Fulani militias on motorcycles with AK 47s and RPGs, who happen to be from a traditionally herdsman tribe, it is repugnant doublespeak to call that a farmer herder clash. And no, it has nothing to do with global warming or economic inequality or any other ridiculous woke talking point pushed out to muddy the waters and deny this present Holocaust. It is driven by radical Islam, fueled by the blood mineral trade, and is continuing to strategically realign the Nigerian political map. There are people today who are personally benefiting enormously by these horrors. Now, here's a disclaimer. I will include many such disclaimers here so there's no misunderstanding. The granular details here are murky. The truth is buried under blood oaths, sadistic savagery, age old tribal identities, radical Islamic theology and brotherhood, the highest levels of international meddling and corruption, and immense illicit wealth. The truth has been buried in mass graves alongside innocent people murdered in the most horrific ways, and almost entirely Christians. All this to say, the known puzzle pieces I will present in this report are verifiable, but I acknowledge without hesitation that they may ultimately be assembled in a slightly different way. At the same time, I believe any rational person will conclude that this report is definitely over the target, and the questions I pose here demand answers. Now, I know many Americans and other outside observers might be alarmed at what I present here. That's because you haven't been paying attention. The world has been distracted by Ukraine and Israel and Iran and sports and entertainment and social media and everything else. But the world must pay attention. Think of it as if it were 1940 and a reporter stumbled into Auschwitz and exposed it to the world. This scenario is not all that different. We must care, because beyond being a massive humanitarian crisis, the clear and present national security implications affect us all over the world. To Nigerians hearing this, from all tribes and faiths and regions of the country, you know in your heart that what I'm speaking is true. You may find it abhorrent, you may find it
In the heart of the city where stories unfold.
It's what you call common knowledge in Nigeria.
Changing media TV shining bright and
But
bold.
even so, everyone knows it's
Bringing news from the corners of the globe.
people have historically
Connects
been
us
charged
together,
with prison
no matter the
or
road.
death for what I'm
Oh, just rise, hear the voices
I believe
roar.
the shock
Unity and diversity.
hearing this is not from revelation, but from the fact somebody finally had the courage to speak it out loud. While after this, you can't say you didn't know. The real question is, what are you going to do about it? Now, a few notes about this report, because the report is so precisely detailed, 60 pages, including 319 citations. What I deliver now will be an abridged oral version. This full oral report is being delivered via timed X premiere. Multiple shorter video clips will be syndicated soon after. The document is also dropping online and being syndicated at the same time. It's being sent to highest level officials in the United States and top media outlets both in the US and Nigeria and internationally. You may download a copy at www.idpjustice.org or at my blog, mikearnold.org. Now for the report. What I'm about to present is a solemn and formal statement. It is a result of 6 years of research, 16 trips to Nigeria, over 80 hours of video documentation and direct testimony from genocide survivors, government officials, intelligence sources, clergy, historians, journalists, and traditional rulers. This is not speculation. This is not theory. This is evidence. And today, it is submitted to both the Nigerian people and the international community for urgent investigation. Let's begin with this essential truth. Genocide is occurring in Nigeria today. That fact is now undeniable. I presented the documented evidence in Abuja on October 14th. Since then, it has triggered formation of an emergency Nigerian Senate Special Committee, flooded Nigerian media with approaching now 5 billion total impressions, and rallied voices globally. But today we ask the next question: who is orchestrating it? When I first visited Nigeria in 2010, the nation was relatively peaceful. There were no major displacement camps and no clear signs of ethnic cleansing or mass targeting of Christians. That changed after 2011. The post-election riots that year marked a turning point. In 12 northern Sharia-controlled states, mobs killed over 800 and torched hundreds of churches. It was brutal, but it wasn't random. It revealed what is clearly an intelligent design, a deliberate strategy to unleash chaos, dismantle pluralism, and reset Nigeria's power structure under a revived Fulani Islamic order. Today, that design has matured. Between January and August 2025 alone, 7,087 Christians were killed. 1,583 churches were burned. Countless more Nigerians displaced, literally countless, because the government denies them, doesn't count them. Over 99.8% of these incidents occurred within the exact geographic footprint of the historic Sokoto Caliphate. That pattern is not coincidence, and it's accelerating. To understand this, we must go back 2 centuries. In the early 1800s, Usman Dan Fodio launched a jihad against Hausa rulers and non-Muslim tribes, establishing the Sokoto Caliphate, one of the largest pre-colonial empires in African history. It operated through massacre, forced conversion, slavery, and total dominance. Sound familiar? The Sokoto Caliphate was established and always has operated and sought to expand based on their fundamental belief that Allah rewards those who brutally kill people simply for believing something different than them. That has been their creed for 19 generations, and it's their creed today. When the British arrived, they didn't dismantle this system, they preserved it. Through the strategy of indirect rule, corporate administrators, now I call them corporate and not colonial because Nigeria was never a colony, it was a collection of extraction corporations. Anyway, these British administrators empowered these same Fulani overlords to govern on Britain's behalf. At independence in 1960, the British favored rulers designed the federal architecture to entrench this advantage. Even the villa, their White House, was constructed with 2 mosques and no Christian chapel. The system of conquest was not dismantled. It was absorbed, rebranded, and remains operational today. In the late 1960s, the power structure was threatened. The Igbos, predominantly Christian from the south, sought secession. The Biafran War followed. The Nigerian state, led by northern Fulani commanders and backed by Great Britain, responded not with negotiation, but with annihilation. Up to 2 million men, women, and children were starved to death through British-backed blockades. This wasn't a conventional war, it was calculated punishment. It taught every minority group in Nigeria a brutal lesson. Challenge the system, and you will be erased. In 2006, a powerful new figure took the throne of Sokoto. Mohammed Saad Abubakar III, a former brigadier general, 19th direct descendant of Usman Dan Fodio, and today the most influential Islamic leader in West Africa. Like a combination king and pope for some 108 million Muslims in his West African caliphate. His rise coincided with a sharp turn in the evolution of Nigeria's Jihad crisis. But to understand this man, we must look at 3 years just prior to his taking the throne. From 2003 to 2006, Abubakar served as Nigeria's defense attaché to Pakistan. In this capacity, as a brigadier general, he was not just stationed in Islamabad, he was formally accredited to Afghanistan. In plain terms, that means he was officially authorized to operate in both Pakistan and Afghanistan during the height of the US and NATO war on terror. That role granted him access to regional military briefings, intelligence networks, and the epicenter of global jihad during its most volatile years, including active Taliban and Al Qaeda operations and their Pakistani intelligence enablers. This is not speculation. In addition, U.S. congressional testimony and contemporary military reports established that Nigerian fighters were documented on the ground fighting alongside Taliban and Al Qaeda in Afghanistan during this same time period. Immediately after Abubakar returned from this military post and assumed the Sultanate, Nigeria's jihadist movement rapidly transformed, adopting sophisticated tactics that mirrored those observed in Afghanistan and Pakistan. In 2006, Boko Haram was a radical fringe movement. By 2011, they had adopted IEDs, suicide bombings, coordinated mass attacks, and kidnapping for ransom tactics identical to those used in Afghanistan and Pakistan. The first suicide bombing in Nigerian history, targeting the UN headquarters in Abuja, occurred in 2011. I happened to actually be personally in Abuja when that happened. At present, the Caliphate is home to international terror groups including Boko Haram, ISWAP, Islamic State West African Province, and Saru, an Al Qaeda affiliate, and Janum linked cells crossing from Niger and Mali, and the most active killers of all, the indigenous militant Fulani Jihad militias. Today, the Sultan commands 19 hereditary emirs who oversee nearly all of northern Nigeria. Ultimate legal and spiritual influence across 12 Sharia states. Assets said to exceed $1 billion US, including land, oil, and foreign donations. And absolute spiritual leadership over some 108 million Muslims in West Africa. And yet, in 2025, Amid this year's systematic killing of more than 7,000 Christians, the burning of more than 1,500 churches, and the coordinated rise of terror groups like ISWAP and Fulani jihadist militias, the Sultan has issued, based on publicly available records, no fatwa of condemnation, no directive to his emirs to curtail this bloody jihad, no emergency mobilization of his vast religious network. This is despite the fact that in 2015, a single fatwa from the Sultan against Boko Haram reduced their recruitment from between 30 and 50% in Kano and Sokoto, proving his power over his subjects. It is important to note at the time he did this, he was in a political dispute with Boko Haram because they challenged his authority. He did not issue similar fatwas against other terror groups at the same time in his caliphate that had similar genocidal body counts, including the ISWAP and Fulani militias, who are doing most of the killing today. Why didn't he issue fatwas against them? Was it because these groups did not challenge his authority? That's a matter for investigation. So the question must be asked, if he has so much power to curb Boko Haram then, why has he chosen silence now? That question, given the scale of the ongoing genocide, demands international investigation. Before we continue with questions about those in power, we must focus on those who suffer most, the displaced generation. Today, Nigeria's IDPs number between 4 and 10 million, spread across the nation, including in some of the most horrific concentration camps imaginable. This number includes an estimated at least 2 million children under 18, hundreds of thousands of widows whose husbands were killed, entire generations of orphans. Many camps report 40% to 60% of children have lost one or both parents to the violence. I'm in close contact with an orphanage for 286 of these children through their adoptive mother. I'm currently in the process of recording their testimonies. These children, and hundreds of thousands more like them, represent both the evidence of genocide and Nigeria's future. This is where the genocide is visible, undeniable, and urgent. Every day of inaction creates catastrophe, physical death. These people are dying of malnutrition, disease, and exposure every single day. Psychological death, trauma without treatment creates permanent damage. Cultural death, Christian communities are dispersed, traditional cultures are erased. Future death, radicalization pipelines recruit from these people, and it is estimated that between 1 and 2 million youth will be radicalized by 2030. These are not statistics. These are 7-year-old girls who watched their fathers hacked to death in front of them. Teenage boys who buried their siblings in shallow graves. Young mothers who fled with babies on their backs. Husbands' bodies left burning. Grandmothers caring for 8 to 10 orphan children in refugee tents. The Nigerian government can deny genocide in press conferences. They cannot deny 4 to 10 million internally displaced Nigerians dispersed all over their country, including in concentration camps. They cannot explain away the orphans, widows, and survivors whose testimony I continue to document. This displaced generation holds the power to expose genocide, prevent radicalization, restore Nigeria, and create accountability, but only if the world recognizes and focuses on them right now. Given everything we know, certain questions demand investigation. Number one, Pakistan posting in Jihad globalist network. What did the Sultan learn during his posting in Pakistan and Afghanistan? Did his role involve liaison with regional figures, including those linked to Taliban or Al Qaeda networks? How did Nigerian jihadist tactics become more sophisticated immediately after his return? And is there a connection? Number two, selective exercise of authority. Why has the Sultan issued no religious or political action against jihadist groups, despite proven authority to reduce their recruitment by up to 50%? Number three, knowledge and inaction. The Sultan recently stated publicly that no one is killed in his caliphate without the traditional rulers knowing. If this is true, then he possesses full knowledge of this independently documented genocide. and there's no record of him speaking against it or trying to stop it. If this is not true, if he doesn't know what's happening under his nose, then his authority is a fiction. Which is it? Number 4, resource, plunder, and financing. What role, if any, does the Sultan play in or benefit from the black market blood mineral trade with a reported $9 billion a year worth of gold, lithium, tin, and rare earths looted from his very soil of his kingdom? Who controls these networks? Who does this mining? Who buys the minerals? Where does all this money go and how much of it funds jihad activities? And why is there no record of the Sultan trying to stop it? Number 5, geographic correlation. The ongoing jihad genocide is bigger than Nigeria, reaching into neighboring nations, but almost 100% of it occurs within the historic boundaries of the Sokoto Caliphate. Why does all this violence in West Africa occur within his hereditary kingdom? Number 6, complicity, incompetence, or something else. Does available evidence suggest the Sultan is complicit, incompetent, or powerless, or something else entirely? If he's not involved in what appears to be the intelligent design of the strategic machinery of modern jihad, then who is? If he really wants it to stop, and he has the power to do so, then why doesn't it stop? Or is he emasculated and incompetent, unable to stop what's happening right under his nose? Or is it something else? I'm not accusing, I'm asking the questions that logic demands. This isn't just about Nigeria. Boko Haram and ISWAP recruitment videos explicitly declare the plan. Nigeria is phase 1. A revived global caliphate is the end goal. In all their recruitment videos, you see Western flags fall one by one while the black jihad banner rises. Former President Muhammad Buhari, himself Fulani and from the Sokoto Caliphate heartland, declared publicly that Muslims should only vote for Muslims. It is their religious duty, he said. He also stated, quote, I will continue to show openly and inside me the total commitment to the Sharia movement that is sweeping all over Nigeria. And again in 2013, he said, under Sharia, there is no room for secularism. These aren't just personal convictions, they are ideological declarations from a former head of state. In 2025, the Sultan himself pushed for Sharia law in southern states beyond his territory. The apparent intent of some actors appears to be this: religious domination over all of Nigeria rather than coexistence. So, what does this all add up to? The system established by the first Sultan of Sokoto 19 generations ago was never dismantled. It was preserved first by the British through indirect rule, then entrenched in independence by Fulani elites who designed the post-colonial state in their favor. The Biafran War crushed any serious challenge to that system, and now under the reign of the current Sultan, who served as a brigadier general in the epicenter of global jihad during its most volatile years, that system appears not just intact, but weaponized and globalized. If this is ignored and the conquest continues, you can watch for these things. The Holocaust of Christians, peaceful Muslims, and other minorities will continue to grow. Millions of the displaced generation will be radicalized by 2030. A self-funding caliphate will control $40 billion a year in oil and $700 billion in mineral reserves with designs on global domination. Refugee crises will displace at least 10 million to Europe and the Americas, and West Africa will collapse into jihad warfare. General Michael Langley, U.S. AFRICOM commander, now retired, told the U.S. Congress earlier this year that jihad terrorism has increased tenfold in Africa, and this area is now the epicenter of global terrorism. This is not a regional crisis. This is a global crisis, fast brewing. The evidence is overwhelming. The pattern is undeniable. The cost of inaction will be catastrophic. So now we ask, what must be done? These are my recommendations. Number 1, Immediate U.S. congressional delegation to Nigerian IDP camps and mass graves. Just like in Bosnia in 1995, when congressional delegates visited Srebrenica mass graves and forced the world to confront genocide, so too must U.S. lawmakers walk through the camps in Abuja, Jos, and Benue. Let them hear from widows who lost everything. Let them hear from orphans who saw their parents slaughtered. They are living eyewitnesses to genocide, and their voices must be heard. Let them see the mountains of dirt left over from illegal strip mining of blood-soaked ground. Let them see the mass graves in Nalatwa, where 200 to 280 bodies were bulldozed into the dirt after an attack that left no survivors. Let cameras roll. Let witness testimonies be recorded. Let the world see what the Nigerian government is hiding and denying. This one action can force global recognition, unlock humanitarian aid, and open the floodgates of accountability. Number two, focus on the displaced generation. Emergency humanitarian relief is needed today. Every congressional hearing should feature testimonies from internally displaced Nigerians. Every media story should center displaced voices. Every humanitarian dollar should prioritize the camps and getting people out of the camps back home, restored safely. Every diplomatic pressure point should reference specific displaced persons. Every ICC filing should be built on IDP evidence. Make the displaced generation impossible to ignore. This is how the genocide will be stopped. Immediate actions must include emergency witness documentation teams to major IDP camps, trauma counseling and medical care for widows and orphans, educational programs preventing radicalization, international adopt-a-camp programs, and fast-track resettlement for most vulnerable witnesses. Number three, formal U.S. and international investigation into the Sultanate and Sultan of Sokoto. It is no longer acceptable to treat the Sultan of Sokoto and the Caliphate as a benign religious institution, when violence maps 99.8% to its historic territory, when its leader commands billions in assets and more than 100 million followers, when he served in Pakistan and Afghanistan during the same period that Nigerian fighters were captured alongside Taliban fighters. In his return, it coincided with homegrown Jihad taking suddenly on Taliban's advanced tactics. When he holds a documented record of fatwas that can influence jihadist recruitment, when the same man says no one is killed without our knowledge, while more than 7,000 Christians are slaughtered in 8 months under his nose, these patterns, based on independent data, raise serious questions. Is the Sultanate of Sokoto, through action or inaction, enabling jihad terrorism? This is not a conviction or even an accusation. It is a statement of facts that demand investigation by the U.S. State Department, the UN Security Council, and every body that claims to oppose genocide. If the evidence meets the standard, then designate it under U.S. Executive Order 13224 to trigger asset freezes, banking restrictions, and international isolation as a global terrorist organization. Number four, International Criminal Court prosecution for genocide and crimes against humanity. The International Criminal Court does not require body counts or battlefield victories to bring charges of genocide. It requires proof of intent to destroy a people group in whole or in part. And today, the deliberate abuse, neglect, and persecution of internally displaced persons in Nigeria is enough. The standard has already been met to prosecute this government for genocide. Millions of Nigerians have been violently displaced and now languish in IDP camps, intentionally deprived of food, medical care, security, and education. They are bulldozed, they are ignored, they are criminalized, and they are deliberately left to die slowly, invisibly. This appears not to be mere bureaucratic failure, but a pattern suggestive of deliberate design. And it mirrors precedents already upheld by the International Criminal Court. In Darfur, the ICC indicted Omar al-Bashir not only for killings, but for engineering the starvation and mass displacement of targeted groups. In Myanmar, the ICC is prosecuting generals for systematically driving displaced people into camps and denying them survival, just like they're doing in Nigeria. In both cases, mass displacement plus deliberate denial of aid was sufficient to trigger genocide charges. The same conditions exist in Nigeria today. The displaced generation is not nameless. They are not lost in time. They are here, millions of them, ready to testify. The abuses they suffer daily are crimes against humanity. The policy of systematic abandonment they endure constitutes genocide under international law. No further evidence is needed to begin. A single congressional delegation or ICC field mission within the capital of Abuja alone will provide enough proof. This can and must begin now. 5. Expedited asylum for Nigerian Christians and key witnesses. If we're serious about justice, then we must protect truth tellers. The orphan child who saw her parents beheaded, the pastor whose church was torched, the activist with footage of a massacre. These are not political agitators. They are the frontline eyewitnesses of genocide. The United States, the EU, and allied nations must act now to grant expedited asylum to Christian survivors, protect key witnesses for ICC proceedings, and support a Nigerian diaspora that will never let the world forget. Let the message be clear to every person who engages in, enables, or profits from terror. If you will not stop this genocide, the world will stop you. You have silenced your victims. We will give them a voice. The evidence you buried, we will unearth it. All of it. You will be seen. You will be exposed. You will be judged by history, by law, by the nations who still believe in justice, by God Almighty, and by the amazing Nigerian people you have abused and oppressed for far too long. We're living in a dark time, uncovering a systematic holocaust of Christians and peaceful Muslims. The world is watching, and history is recording. I call on every Nigerian, I call on every person of conscience in the world today to pause and ask yourself, how will I want history to remember my actions after I learned about this? When your grandchildren, coming home from history class, ask, what did you do to help end the Nigerian Holocaust? What do you want to tell them? I'm not Nigerian, but I've built schools and IDP camps. I've cried with orphans in Jos. I have walked in communities stricken by massacre and the camps of the displaced. I've met with orphans and I'm recording their testimonies after they watched their parents hacked to death. I have met your elders and governors and presidents. I've spoken truth in Abuja, and I speak truth here now. There is a design, there is an origin, and there must be accountability. To those behind this violence, to those enriching yourselves from it, to those in power enabling it or just turning a blind eye, and to the Sultan of Sokoto, given these documented patterns, the worldwide demand for investigation and accountability grows louder. History has turned, the earth is shaking, and the world is watching. This generation can be the one that ends it if we choose light over silence. This ends the oral presentation of my report. Thank you. God bless you. God bless America, and today especially, God bless Nigeria.
Prophet don't whisper, prophet must roar.
Ladies and gentlemen of the press, and we have here some Americans on a fact-finding mission, and I'll introduce them. This is Mayor Mike Arnold, Republican elected mayor of the city of Blanco in Texas, and this is Jeff Gibbs, prominent filmmaker from the US, and beside me I have the Secretary General of Jamaatul Nasr al-Islam, and he's going to introduce himself. Sir?
Well, good afternoon all. My name is Professor Khalid Abubakar. I'm the Secretary General of JNI National Headquarters, Nigeria.
You might be wondering why is Khan not here? We did meet with Khan. The fact finders met with Khan before they met with JNI, and that it was important to me. and they had a fruitful conversation. So if any of you have read Today's This Day, on the front page of Today's This Day, you're going to see the deliberations. And so they've met with Khan, they've met with JNI, they've met with other persons, they've also been to IDP camps, and Mayor Mike and Jeff Gibbs have been around this country. Now, the thing is, when all of this information about a Christian genocide in Nigeria began, actually the first mention of that started on September 26th. And I just reached out because the feeling back home is that it was an agenda against Nigeria, it was propaganda against Nigeria, it was to undermine Nigeria. But I just felt that the people who were saying these things, they meant well, and the reason why they were saying it is because they did not have the right information. And so before they came here, the fact finders actually briefed Senator Ted Cruz and Congressman Chip Roy, and when they go back, they will be taking the truth to the American policymakers. Now, without further ado, I'm going to hand over the mic to Mayor Mike Arnold, who's going to address you on their findings so far. And after he speaks, Jeff will also speak, and then we'll take some questions. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. This is a very important time. I am curious. If you're a journalist or a reporter or media person, can you raise your hand just so I know who's? All right, very good. Thank you so much. I do want to give a clarification on a couple things. We've been a little bit rushed. I'm Mayor Mike Arnold, like Good Luck Jonathan is President Good Luck Jonathan. I completed my term a few months ago. I'm not the current seated mayor of the city of Blanco. I just didn't want any misunderstanding there. I am not a personal friend of Ted Cruz. I met him once about 10 years ago when at an event, and he was going down the line and I shook his hand. So I know people in his office, but I'm not a personal friend. Also, and while I may tend to vote for Republican candidates, I haven't been involved in a political party in about 30 years. I'm really not a political person. In fact, the mayor's job for my town in Texas, like a lot of towns, is not a partisan position. Nobody knows what party. It's a small town, and we fix roads and schedule parades and things like that. So just wanted to clarify those things. I'm not a politician. I have a little family construction company that for my livelihood. I am not beholden to any political party here or there. I'm an independent voice, and I just wanted to make sure that that's established. I want to also state briefly why I'm here. People ask, why does this American come over here and say these things? My first trip to Nigeria, this is my 16th trip to Nigeria. My first was in 2010, and I was accompanied a fellow who became my papa, my mentor, Professor John Ofebu. He lived in the United States, but he was a very proud Nigerian. He loved this country. He gave his life for this country. And in fact, this will shock most Nigerians. He was offered U.S. citizenship on multiple occasions, and he always turned it down. I don't know any Nigerians that would do that. I know people that would kill for that, but to turn it down, because he didn't want any split loyalties. He lived and he passed away about 11 years ago as a proud Nigerian. We crisscrossed this country over several years together, and I grew to love the country too, and the people, and have great hope for it. I consider this my second home. And before he passed, he prayerfully put his mantle on me, and I've endeavored since then to be a good steward of that, to steward his legacy. He was the founder of the International Coalition of Reconcilers, and Unity for Africa. He was a man of unity, a man of peace, who loved this country, and I love this country too. It's my second home. Speaking of home, I do want to say this. I would love to, I want to be here longer. I would love to meet everybody and talk and answer questions and all that. When we were preparing to depart to come here, I was notified my 4-year-old grandson Parker was rushed to the hospital
He had been having an ailment for quite a while, fever, trouble eating, and they did every kind of test imaginable for over a week, and they finally determined it was an advanced infection, and he was admitted to the hospital, I'm thankful that we were able to get return tickets. I need to be back there with my family. So we're leaving actually today, our flight leaves, and so my regrets. I'm just thankful that we were able to get this done. This is very important. One other thing, when I was invited on this, I sent a message that said, what is expected of me? And the answer was, message back, just tell the truth. And so that's what I'm here to do. It's not an easy thing. I told my host that probably lose some friends today. I know this is a very contentious and divisive issue, a lot of, on both sides. And I appreciate the freedom of the assignment, but it's a heavy weight. Truth, what is truth? It's an accurate an assertion of reality. It's an accurate picture of reality. That's what truth is. What is real? What is really there? That's what truth is. And truth is the only thing, ultimately, that's sustainable. It's the only thing that can bring us together. If one side or anybody has built anything or advanced anything that's not firmly on the truth, it simply can't last. And so I've been very careful. I've been very precise ever since I got invited, pretty much full-time, late into the night. I've been researching, talking to experts, spent considerable time, retired U.S. ambassador friend of mine, a long-time international human rights attorney, journalists, and others, because the truth is important. And I can't say, nobody can say that what they're going to speak or present is 100% truth, but it's the very best I could do, and it's very well validated and backed up and supported, documented. And I can also guarantee this, it's going to, probably everybody on every side is going to be a little bit uncomfortable with what I say. I would ask you to bear with me to the conclusion, because that's what's important. There have been, I believe, misunderstandings, misconceptions, miscommunications, and agendas on every side of this. And I've attempted to throw those out the window and just focus on the facts. So if anybody's a little uncomfortable, just bear with me. I think it's going to be equally uncomfortable because that's what the truth is, right? I mean, it should be, but it should be good sense of discomfort as we all hopefully get more grounded in reality, in the truth. And I've typed up my remarks, and we've got copies for the journalists. It's a formal statement on widespread violence and displacement in Nigeria. One of the contributors that's listed is U.S. Ambassador Louis Luck. Spent considerable time, and he's done a lot of work. He was an ambassador to Swaziland. He was also the #1 person in charge of rebuilding Iraq after the war, #1 guy in charge of rebuilding Haiti after the earthquake, and former board member of the World Food Program. So he has stature, and he's put his name on here. There are other experts that value the privacy in this day of social media, but if any journalist wants to dig deeper, I'd be happy to make personal connections with any of my sources. So you can, if you don't trust me, maybe you can do your own digging. That's what I encourage everybody to do. Don't ever take anybody's word for anything. Don't ever, specifically, if it's in the Nigerian newspapers, no offense to anybody, but there's oftentimes twists and turns there that don't line up with reality. Do your own homework, do your own research, search your own soul, and always seek the truth, because that's what's sustainable and that's what always wins. The truth always wins. I'm going to start, I'm just going to read it because it is important. Like I said, it's verbatim in the document that will be distributed. It's also posted up, will be posted online, so anybody can read this. But I'm going to read it because I don't want to make any mistakes. I don't want to deviate. Purpose and credentials. My name is Mike Arnold. I recently served as the elected mayor of the city of Blanco, Texas. I first visited Nigeria in 2010 as a board member of Unity for Africa. Since then, I've made 15 trips to Nigeria, including 6 extended investigative missions since 2019. I founded Africa Rise and International and Africa Rise USA 2019, along with my covenant brother, Pastor Jed DeGrace. I have frequently been quoted in top newspapers and TV news broadcasts here, and a couple viral videos too. I've never extracted anything from Nigeria. I've never taken anything home but souvenirs and small gifts. My closest and most trusted friends are native Nigerians. I come only to give, serve, and stand with the people and nation I dearly love as my second home. I was personally invited here today by Reno Omokri, and I got a call last Sunday morning, unexpected, from Reno Omokri. He was on the line with the National Security Advisor. Invited me to on this fact-finding trip and to come give a report. The sole stated written charge given to me for this trip is simply to meet certain key people and then declare the truth. I know what's at stake and take this very seriously. While my plane ticket and accommodations have been paid for, I have not asked for, been offered, nor received any compensation or promise of compensation for this, and no duress either. I've been given freedom. I'm not connected in any way or compensated by the US government. And I don't advocate any policy. I'm not reporting for them, I'm not speaking for them, and I'm not advocating any policy. That's not my role here. I'm here independently, and this statement is made without coercion or inducement of any kind. I also note that numerous top US officials have been briefed and are personally aware of my being here, the purpose of my trip, and my specific itinerary and expected return date. At their request, I am providing updates as to my status. These include, but are not limited to, Senator from the state of Texas, my state, Ted Cruz, and Congressman Chip Roy, the White House, US State Department and acting ambassador, as well as a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist from the New York Times and their international editor. So a lot of people are waiting for this. Also note that as I present this statement, it is being simultaneously distributed not only to these people who are awaiting it, but also posted online for all to access. This statement is my formal account and analysis of facts, findings, and firsthand documentation of widespread claims of widespread violence, displacement, and atrocity crimes in Nigeria, primarily directed against Christian populations in the North and Middle Belt claims, and whether this rises to the level of genocide. Let me just pause there. This is heavy. This is serious. It's not something to play word games with. It's addressed to journalists, international observers, human rights bodies, and policymakers in the United States and abroad. We've traveled to cities, villages, and remote encampments from Bokos, Jos, and Gwoza to Abuja, Lagos, Port Harcourt, Bakuma, Makoko. Been all over in these last 6 years. I've interviewed governors, cabinet ministers, traditional rulers, 2 former presidents of high standing, and others. I have met orphans whose parents were hacked to death. I've helped them. I've built schools in internally displaced persons, IDP camps, and documented over 80 hours of filmed testimony and evidence at great personal risk, soon to be released on our documentary film, Me and Miss Hantu. My findings carry the weight of direct personal experience. Nigeria in 2010, a nation at peace. In 2010, Nigeria was a beacon of rising prosperity and religious tolerance, often cited as the only country where radical Islam was being pushed back. Attacks were rare and sparked national outrage. Recognized IDPs were effectively zero, with only minimal displacement from localized communal conflicts. A stark contrast to the crisis that followed, marked by a 1,200% surge in IDPs the very next year, 2011, due to Boko Haram's escalation. The prior absence of displacement crisis is both verifiable and damning, because today there's not an accurate count, because I know we have schools and camps that the governments of the world, including Nigerian government, deny exist. So the quoted figures of 3 to 4 million internally displaced people is clearly low. And I've heard numbers as many as, in fact, the first time we talked, you said 9 million. What has changed since then? By 2014, Nigeria's stability was shattered. Foreign meddling, including US involvement, played a pivotal role in the 2015 election, enabling regime change that emboldened actors who ignored or enabled extremist violence. High-placed eyewitness testimony confirms this interference, with firms like Cambridge Analytica further skewing the political landscape. Radical jihadist elements fueled by foreign fighters from Libya and Sahel, post-2011 Arab Spring, many who say were invited, not invaded at that stage, flooded into Nigeria, amplifying Boko Haram and ISWAP. Today, over 4 million Nigerians are displaced, a very conservative estimate. That's based on, in part on my work in hidden camps, and officials who label these IDPs officially as criminals or vagrants. I'm going to pause there for 1 second to make this point, because it's very clear that Nigerians understand this. We did a groundbreaking for a school at an IDP camp 2 years ago. And several journalists came and wrote articles about it. And my remarks were, and the whole purpose of this, what we do is we build camps and schools and IDP camps. And that was the whole purpose of this. The news report said that we build schools in rural communities. Took out the whole idea of IDPs. If reality, if truth is the only way for unity, and truth is the only thing sustainable, the Nigerian media, at least the ones in my experience, I don't know where they get off changing my words to sterilize it. But if you work for a paper and you're guilty of that, you're not a journalist, you're a propagandist, and it's for shame. Your job is to speak the truth. Nigeria cannot heal, it cannot advance, it cannot succeed if the people of this country rely on your words to understand the truth and you're lying to them. Sorry, we got a little bit off track, but that's reality, okay? This is too important. Don't change my words. The vast majority of the IDPs are Christians, driven from their homes by deliberate political engineering and radical conquest, while mostly Muslim IDP camps do exist. One of our schools serves an entirely Muslim population, several hundred children. Our team's fieldwork. Since 2019, our team has conducted relentless frontline research at great personal risk. We've interviewed survivors across multiple states. We've operated schools in 2 IDP camps for both Christians and Muslims, with a third under construction, with a present total of 550 students. We provide free, high-quality education, and we get to hear their stories and their parents' stories. Firsthand eyewitnesses. We filmed camps the UN and Nigerian government deny exist. I could take you to them. We recorded numerous IDP testimonials. We have, in fact, a YouTube channel, My Voice Matters, with firsthand eyewitness testimonials. In late 2024, my team visited and filmed in Goshe, in Gwoza, LGA, Borno State, a once thriving Christian farming community, now a post-apocalyptic wasteland. Recent 2025 attacks confirm ongoing devastation, with surviving Christians combined to militarized zones, where leaving risks abduction or execution. Another aside, I wasn't, of course, able to go there, but the team that did connected with a small group there that have a small church this in the protected zone. And it was not long afterwards we got sent roundabout a Boko Haram video with members of this church having their heads cut off with dull axes. Okay? Those were our friends. Our firsthand proof exposes a reality ignored by officials. Many people of Gwoza have been refugees in Cameroon for over a decade, abandoned by Nigeria, while those who return languish in the FCT, their homelands occupied by Boko Haram as the seat of its caliphate for years now. Consistent pattern of destruction. Across regions and years, we've documented a chilling pattern. Churches destroyed. In Gwoza, when they came in Ngoshe, all 6 churches were burned, no mosques were burned. Christian homes torched, jihadists resettled in captured lands. Authorities deny or excuse the attacks. While some Muslims resisting extremism are targeted, absolutely. The peaceful Muslims are targeted. The overwhelming evidence, thousands of churches raised, obviously selective violence, leads some to claim this is a faith-based genocide against Christians and those rejecting radical Islam. That's what some claim. What drives this violence? This has come from the highest level and the deepest research. And there's 3 primary drivers. It's not chaos, but it's calculated. One, radical, I think we all would refute and repudiate, but radical Islamic conquest. Armed groups, bolstered by foreign fighters from Libya, Sahel, post-Arab Spring, seek to impose extremist ideology with local enablers and political protection described by eyewitnesses as jihad by occupation. Blood mineral extraction. A former president is the one that pointed me in this direction. Nigeria, according to the government's estimates, which in my humble opinion are probably way low, Nigeria loses $9 billion annually to illicit mining of gold, tin, and lithium. Oftentimes these communities that are wiped out, you go back not long after and there's mounds of dirt from the strip mining. $9 billion a year. And again, the government's estimates, with a significant portion estimated to be 10% funding violence and corruption. That's $900 million a year, at least, that's funding the violence and corruption that does this. That needs to be investigated. Heavy machinery and foreign buyers appear days after displacements, exploiting lands of the displaced. Politically realignment, war in some cases, and again, let me say this, I'm not pointing fingers, I'm not saying just because an official here does it that's an indictment of the entire government. But war often masquerades as politics. Local government areas overrun, electoral districts redrawn by force, militants resettled, and each given 4 abducted wives to skew demographics, dismantling communities deemed inconvenient. This is fully documented. It shouldn't be debated. I'm just going to go where the facts led me. There's a euphemism of farmer-herder clashes. Yes, those have happened for generations. The term farmer-herder clashes is, in many instances today, is cynical doublespeak, weaponizing historical land disputes to mask jihadist conquest. For centuries, herders and farmers coexisted with very rarely lethal disputes. Now, villages are systematically razed, churches leveled, and tens of thousands are dead. This is a systematic terror and not grazing conflicts. A lie akin to calling Bosnia's ethnic cleansing a neighborhood spect. These targeted deadly attacks are the same whether labeled herders, bandits, or insurgents. The puppets may change, but the same forces pull the strings. A jihadi by any other name is just as deadly. Mincing words over labels appears to be intentional obfuscation. Now, at what level the people just say, that's what I was told, that's what was reported, and honest people can repeat things that are not true. Again, not indicting anybody, but in many of these instances, I would, if you're told it's a farmer-herder clash, I would compel you to dig deeper. While global attention often focuses on Boko Haram and ISWAP, the majority of killings and displacements across the Middle Belt are in fact carried out by radical Islamist Fulani ethnic militia. Numerous field reports, satellite imagery, survivor testimonies confirm that these militant groups, often operating under political protection and mislabeled as herders, are responsible for the most widespread, systematic, and sustained attacks on Christian farming communities. Their campaigns extend well beyond traditional grazing disputes, encompassing organized massacres, forced displacement, and the strategic occupation of conquered lands. Today, these militias represent the single most lethal terrorist threat in Nigeria's internal stability, surpassing Boko Haram and ISWAP combined in reach, frequency, and civilian death toll. The crime of obfuscation. I have personally seen ongoing efforts by officials and their loyal media to bury the truth, sanitizing massacres as conflict, labeling displaced survivors, vagrants, and criminals, refusing to name perpetrators. This is not confusion, it is complicity. To play semantic games while people die is beyond obscene. There can be no solution while leaders play word games to hide the truth. And again, I'm not saying that everybody that repeats these things are doing it intentionally whatsoever, but at some level, there is a lot of manipulation taking place to hide the truth. So let's get to the conclusion, because this is where it's important, because there is a legal definition of genocide. That's the question here. And it's not a vague thing. You don't want it to be or not to be. And I did not start with my conclusion. I started with the evidence. Per Article 2 of the UN Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide in 1948, genocide includes acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. It includes killing members of the group, causing seriously bodily or mental harm, inflicting conditions to bring about physical destruction, preventing births within the group, forcibly transferring children to another group. This is the legal, international, understanding definition of genocide. The evidence is undeniable. Targeted killings, mass displacement, destruction of homes and churches, denial of aid, and erasure of Christian identity. My conclusion, my formal findings, an objective expert and eyewitness, a longtime lover and traveler throughout Nigeria with access at the highest levels, based on more than 5 years of investigation, field interviews, first-hand documentation, and deep consultation with top scholars, statesmen, and legal experts, and I'm happy to introduce you to all of that. And this document has more than 15 citations. I declare this without any shadow of a doubt. The campaign of violence and displacement in northern and middle belt Nigeria does indeed constitute a calculated, current, and long-running genocide against Christian communities and other religious minorities without any reasonable doubt. To continue to deny this is to be complicit with these atrocities. I say this not in anger, but in truth and grief. My stated assignment from my host was to speak the truth, and I have done that to the best of my ability. I believe Nigeria has a bright future. I believe in Christian-Muslim harmony. I believe good people of every tribe and faith and party must stand against this evil, but first we must name it. Here I stand. I can do no other, so help me God.